What's going on, everybody? Grim here, and today I have a package, an open package of that. However, that's mostly because I had to remove all the information stuff that had my personal information on it. But this is a package that I'm vaguely aware of what it is, and I'm pretty excited for what it's supposed to be. So, taking this thing aside, we have what appears to be one of these slips and something that's jingling around inside of that. A pair of glasses. That kind of gives me a thing of what's in here. And we have a package. So, this is, I guess I should say now, is a review sample that I've been sent by Rekt, or otherwise known as Umarex, by their Vice President of Managing, to review their product of the Rekt Jury Revolver. They sent me one in red, I believe. Yep. And this is a product I've been very excited for a long time. I don't bring it up very often, but I've been very interested in this Rekt line of blasters because before I got into the hobby at large, I still nerfed and whatnot. I was actually into airsoft for a hot minute for a while, and Umarex and their line of products were some of my preference. So as soon as I had heard that they were planning on making CO2 blasters, I really liked the concept because at the time I wasn't a big fan of how loud flywheelers got and that you had to rev them beforehand. And springers, you always had to manually prime them, of course, and I was really weak at the time. So I liked the idea of a CO2 cartridge blaster that was semi-automatic and had decent performance. Nowadays, of course, we know that these things only hit about 100 FPS or so, and you have to replace the cartridges every 100 shots. It's still a cool thing in my opinion because it gets you this really tight and clean package where you have a blaster that's a much smaller size without needing all that extra space for things like batteries, flywheels, and whatnot. You can get a flywheeler pretty small with like micro flywheels and whatnot, but not to the same degree, I think, as something like this. Let me just finagle this out of its little twist tie prison, and we will get this out and see how it feels in our hands. It's actually very comfortable at that. Starting up at the front, this muzzle is a little bit wider, which I kind of like because it adds a bit more orange to an otherwise fairly real steel profile. The barrel is up at the top rather than the bottom on some revolvers, such as some flywheel revolvers I've seen. There is a system right here which you push forward and up that allows you to drop out the cylinder. These are there's an extra cylinder in the package included right here, which you can simply swap in by popping it in here, pushing that down, and pushing that back. The hammer, as far as I'm aware, it's single action and double action. So one pull of the trigger will cycle the cylinder, or you can do it simply by pulling it back and firing. There is also a safety right here. By pushing that up, you can no longer pull the trigger, and therefore it is safe. And now, as for how it works, the side panel, I believe, can be slipped off, and then it turns into an Allen key which you twist to put the CO2 cartridges in. I'm not going to put that in just yet. Included is also some of their own styling of darts. From what I've seen, I believe there's something, just a second, let me get this open right there. There we go. The tips are a little more solid than your standard elite style tip, but they're not so hard as something like an FVJ, so it's somewhere in between. I'll still fire some of these through here to get an idea as to what it looks like, but I think if I'm going to be running these, I'll probably run it with something similar to Adventure Force half darts, which have a much softer tip. Alrighty guys, apologies for that. My phone, accidentally from the last couple days of recording, has run out of storage, so I'm just going to, the darts are already out of their package now, and I'm going to open this little package of safety glasses. If you notice I'm not currently wearing any, I'm going to put these on to replace those, and I think, looking at these are actually quite a handsome pair of glasses, to be honest. It's really, they feel a lot more sturdy than the stuff I've been using of my, I have some shooting glasses that I wear. These even have like a nice comfy ceiling area right here that appears to be of some kind of foam or like rubber material. The glasses themselves feel quite sturdy. It's quite a quality thing to send with them, and they don't seal up 100%, but because this isn't something like airsoft, I don't think a small gap like this is going to get anything stuck up there. A dart, even if it came up from here, is only going to go like right there. So, and they probably fit better on some other people. I really do like how these feel. They're a lot more comfortable than my previous pair of glasses that I've been wearing for nerfing, so these are probably going to be my actual, from now on, glasses that I use. That aside, as Nathan had mentioned when we ran out of storage, he had tested the dart fit on these, and the dart fit in the cylinder is actually quite good. In his words, Hasbro should take some notes. I really do like how it feels like it's a nice, solid fitment all around these darts. You can definitely tell they put some thought into this. Unfortunately, one thing that should be noted is it's not ambidextrous in the loading mechanism, as you can load darts through this side of the blaster. However, you can't eject the cylinders from the other side because it's taken up by this system. So it appears like it's mostly made for right-handed users. Of course, as a lefty who's lived this long, at this point I've come to expect it, and of course that's not going to stop me from having fun with it. It just should be noted for anyone who that might be a bit of a bigger issue for, who may not want to have to deal with that. That aside, I've now loaded up these cylinders real quick. And let's pop one in, make sure that we have that pushed up, push that back down, and there we go. Of course, I still haven't loaded any of the CO2 yet because we're not out on the range, but things aside, including ergonomics, which is something I hadn't gone over yet, the grip is very, very comfortable. I had previously stated in a previous video that the Rival Fate was probably one of my more comfortable recent grips on things I've gripped. This is probably right up there. Personally, I like a lot of the grips, like the grip on the Strife and the Fate. This is also one of those other grips I definitely put in my list of comfortable grips. But it definitely is in a nice, shapely package that I like quite a bit. The form factor feels really comfortable. The center of balance is in a good position as well. Even stuff like this trigger and this, the hammer and the trigger are made of metal, so it feels very sturdy as well. It doesn't feel particularly cheap or anything, especially considering this is Umarex's some of their earlier forays into blasters, because they've only made, I think, 3 blasters, including this now. The quality on the plastic is pretty good, all things considered. With that aside, I'll take this out onto the range, and we will test a range test. Then we will do a close quarters test on, Nathan will fire a couple shots at me, I'll fire a couple shots at him, and we're trying to gauge as to, based on how much these blasters are hitting out, if it's still safe to allow in a close quarters environment and whatnot, and if we're comfortable with allowing these at our local wars. So with that aside, let's take it out to the range test and we'll see how it performs. Alrighty guys, I'm out here at a range over here that we've set up. This thing is about 35 feet down from here, and we'll be taking some test shots to see about how it performs. However, it should be noted that despite how enthusiastic I am, I thought that it basically split my mind because of how excited for the product I was. I do need to get this out of the way, that because this was sent to me for free and was sent to me for a review, that is a thing that occurred. However, that will not skew my review in any way. I am excited for this product, but my opinions are fully my own and they are not paid for. You cannot buy my opinion, and no one will ever be able to buy my opinion. This product was sent to me for review, but they're getting a review, and that's the only thing that I agreed upon as per getting sent this blaster. All right, with that out of the way, let's see how it performs. Okay, I think we're out of our first cylinder. I left my other cylinder in the recording room. That is embarrassing to say the least. Now, let's see. Okay, we have about one more in the chamber. Like similarly to Elite darts, these appear to be just about as inaccurate, but that was to be expected based off the tip design as I had seen previously. And I had seen in other people's testing. I'm going to load up another one of these cylinders with some of the Adventure Force, the Target exclusive darts with the gray tips and red foam, and see how those perform out of this thing. Let's load up a cylinder, and then I'll give it a shot. And then I'll also fire one cylinder with the Adventure Force standard rounds that came out when they first released the Dark Zone Pro, the gray ones with the orange tips. Okay, maybe the tips are either too long or I didn't push them in enough because it doesn't want to cycle. Let's push these down a little more So I guess that is one thing that should be noted, is that you're going to have to be cautious of how far up the tips are sticking, because there isn't any room for any accidental things, otherwise they won't rotate the cylinder. Okay, these do appear to be performing a little bit more accurately previously. However, there may be some sort of inefficiency in the system itself that leads to some of the whirlybirds you see in the other directions. However, it does seem to be actually flinging them downrange quite well. Now, I'm going to load up one cylinder with the gray Adventure 4 starts and see how those perform instead. Should be noted that these darts won't necessarily exactly fly as far as some fresh darts are, because these darts are from direct from our Canna loaner bin for our half darts. Now, let's see. Okay, I think these need to be pushed down a little bit more. That definitely is a thing to keep in mind. Should you choose to run any Adventure 4 starts, then you'll need to be very cautious about getting those tips down all the way in there. Okay, there we go. One more in the chamber. Perfect. Alrighty, now we'll swap over to a segment where we're testing as to, at close ranges, the overall, in our opinions, how these things hit, and then I'll move on to my final thoughts. Alrighty, so my friend Nathan here is going to hit me a couple shots with this blaster, because we're trying to gauge if this is something that we'll allow at our Canna events, or if we'll reserve those strictly for outdoor Canna events. It should be known that both parties are wearing shatter-resistant safety glasses of some kind, or in his case it's prescription glasses, and that we are fully aware of how things are going, what we're doing. He's aiming for my center of body mass, and that this is just to simulate a general close quarters engagement that we might have at our arena when we're renting out the space for our local wars. Now, you can begin. Okay, some of those shots felt a little bit closer to something like coming out of one of my modified stripes, and then some of those felt a little softer. So it's nothing new, I guess I should say. It feels about the same, so this should be fine. I can fire a couple shots at you as well if you'd like to gauge that.
Of course.
It should also be noted that this is a fresh cartridge of CO2 for effective testing when it comes to the blaster testing, to ensure that the velocity that's coming out of these blasters is as hot as possible, so that way we can ensure that the shots that we're simulating are at the highest potential velocity to simulate as to whether or not it's a good gauge as to whether or not it's safe, you know? So let's begin. Nothing personal, man.
You look like you're aiming right at my face.
I'm not, I assure you. So, how was that?
I mean, it felt like getting hit by a Nexus Pro and a Pro, a Conquest Pro, so not terrible.
That's about what I expected. Yeah, it feels like it might leave a welt or something like that, but like we already allow Nexuses and whatnot.
And so, I mean, as long as we don't fire at each other at a point blank range, it shouldn't be an issue.
The conclusion: safe for CQB ranges as long as the people are used to super stock levels of performance, and you're not point blanking this thing. This thing runs about, from what I've seen from the FPS results from other people, it hits to about 90 to 120 FPS variably, based on how fresh the cartridge is, and can go down to as low as 70 FPS. So overall, I would say, as long as you know what you're doing and you're used to super stock performance, safe for indoor usage. Now, we're going to go back into the recording room and have my final conclusions and final thoughts.
Alrighty guys, a few sick days later of being sick with my allergies, and I'm finally back to recording segments. Granted, I would have liked to have done this sooner, but that is kind of just how life goes. Now, with that out of the way, I would like to get it out of the way that the person who was my cameraman up until now, as I'm now doing this on my own right now, and who was letting me use the space I was recording the review, and a couple other reviews I had done recently, and doing all the testing and making sure that things are safe for our club, is my friend Natix. He has a channel. I'll make sure to link that down below. He has been a huge help with things overall. And once again, just due to him helping me with the using the facilities and everything else, I would really like to give him a huge thank you. Now, back to our review. Alrighty guys, I forgot to mention this earlier, so I'll be showing it up in the top left corner, most likely, or top right corner, how to install a CO2 cartridge into the Rekt revolver. Now, first and foremost, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to remove the side panel. Once the side panel has been removed, you'll notice a metal tool that is sticking out the side of the grip panel. You'll take that, and that is the tool you'll use to unscrew the black cap that is at the bottom of the blaster. Once you've unthreaded it slightly to where you can fit a CO2 cartridge in that section comfortably, you will want to place the CO2 cartridge in there, making sure to aim the top of the CO2 cartridge aligned with the nozzle inside the blaster, and then you can tighten the black cap at the bottom ever so lightly. You don't want to do it very tight until you hear a light spritz. Once the spritz has been audibly heard, you will know that the blaster is now pressurized and now has CO2 ready to run through it. And it must be considered at all times that the blaster is now live and pressurized, so take care of it as you would a live firearm or a live high-performance blaster, if you will, just for safety purposes. Now, another thing I did notice is that none of the other reviewers who got their hands on a Rekt, that as far as I have seen, had done any mention of how to properly take care of a CO2 pistol, let alone a CO2 Nerf blaster at that. So as an ex-airsofter, I will take it upon myself to explain in a separate video, as the video is getting ludicrously long at this point, how to properly take care of, maintain, and use a CO2 Nerf blaster, as to make sure it's always performing at its best and you are being safe with it. Now, with that out of the way, let's get on to the conclusion. Alrighty guys, now with my final thoughts, I really like the Rekt. I've noted that some people who have reviewed the product noted that the $54.99 retail price for this blaster is a bit too expensive, but in my personal opinion, I think it's a justified price point. A similarly compared airsoft pistol, and it's manufactured by an airsoft company, would be around anywhere from 80 USD plus. I think the plastic quality, the metal internal components, and how it performs is a lot for the price point. Sure, it is just a pistol, but the specifications that you need for a CO2 blaster to be safe, and that way it actually functions while taking high pressurized air through it, is a lot more than just a simple Springer like something like your Aeon Pro would require. Furthermore, similarly priced, or not similarly priced, but rather similarly form factor pistols such as the Magpie are actually furthermore even more expensive than the Rekt revolver. Granted, those have the benefit of not constantly having to refill with CO2 cartridges, but the initial cost and constant repairs that need to be done for fit and finish ends up bringing its total cost over almost double the price of the CO2 Rekt. The Rekt, in my opinion, is a great little sidearm. One must, of course, keep in mind, if you are to pick up this product, its pros and cons. For example, its maintenance and overall care for the product is completely different from that of your average flywheeler or Springer, as CO2 blasters are an entirely different beast. Of course, it does also have the benefit, similar to a Springer, of having that grab and go ability. You can just grab a couple cartridges in the blaster itself and it will be ready to go, and single action or double action for your day of play. Meanwhile, something similar to a flywheeler does require that time to charge, and not everyone does have that time. Of course, this circumstance may be different for everyone, so your levels of time, what you're willing to prepare before an event, of course, is also different. It's reliable with solid performance for those who want to replicate having a single action or double action revolver similar to their favorite gunslingers while they're blasting, or for the serious competitive nerfer who doesn't mind the added expense of filling it with a fresh cartridge each round. As long as you keep its pros and cons in mind, I definitely think it's a perfectly fine pickup myself. One thing to keep in mind, of course, is that with its more real steel profile, that you should consider what colors, if you are painting it, what colors it's being painted up in, and it should never be done up in overly primarily dark colors, as you want to keep the safety of yourself and others in mind. And as long as, again, you keep the pros and cons in mind, I think it's a perfectly fine pickup, and you will be more than satisfied with the Rekt revolver. I'll be sure to leave a link in the description on how to acquire one. It is not an affiliate link, as I don't have any affiliates as of current. And with that, this is Grimm's Nerf Works signing off. Have a good one.